Hi there, my name's Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my disclosure channel. I must give you a very graphic warning to start off with. The two ladies, my friends, in the screen have got some really horrific, horrendous information to share in part, things that they went through as beautiful little tiny baby girls. Make sure that there are no children listening. Make sure that you are in a calm situation. If you've gone through horrendous, horrific traumas and MK Ultra programming, this might not be the right broadcast for you. It really isn't the right broadcast for anybody, but these things have happened, and we're going to continue to shine a light so that people that do these kinds of things to little children are brought to justice. We're going to start today with Rachel Vaughan. And Rachel Vaughan was born and raised in Australia, and one of the worst parts of Australia for harming little ones in the satanic, occult, black magic realm is Adelaide, South Adelaide. Now, Rachel, dear, let's come over to you, and please feel free to express what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, so well, it's interesting we're having this broadcast today because my abuse and the cult that I was brought up in is most well known for the disappearance of the three Beaumont children. So my father, Alan Maxwell McIntyre, is a person of interest in that case, and a major crime detective told my brother Andrew McIntyre last year that they know at the major crime department that my father or our father was responsible for the disappearance of those children. What they can't do is dig up the sinkhole at my father's property at Stansbury on the York Peninsula because of the Mulligan inquiry. And the Mulligan inquiry was about the deaths and disappearances of state wards over a very long period of time, decades. The Beaumont children weren't state wards. So that points to the fact that, my siblings and I have been saying for the last 18 years, our father was involved in the trafficking and the abuse and murders of, well, countless children. We don't know how many. I saw many, my brother used to have to burn packages in the incinerator that one day he did this weekly for 3 years. And one day he actually got all the packages out because the cat got into them and he pulled them out and it was a small body of a child all cut up like a butcher would cut up, so that you could get to the marrow and everything. And the only thing missing was with the hands and the feet and the head. And I saw the sort of dismemberments where my father would always take the head and the hands and the feet off. So because they're identifiers. So this is a very well constructed pedophile ring. There was child rape material being made. It wasn't just murders. There was even more horrific things that if you think about the kind of farming that we do of animals, well, it happens with us too. And I'll just leave it at that. Just I was abused. I was sexually abused. I was trafficked through tunnels, which I've proven the existence of. We had a tunnel and a bunker underneath the property that I grew up on in Edwardstown. There's also a bunker at the Stansbury property where there's countless remains buried. And that's part of the reason why the Mulligan inquiry was brought into as an excuse for not digging up at Stansbury. There's a suppression order on that inquiry. So there are state wards, many state wards on that property. There are three within the sinkhole with the three Beaumont children as well. So for those who don't know the story of the Beaumont children, they all disappeared, all three children from one family, not state wards, had family, on Australia Day in 1966. And Australia Day has just occurred yesterday, 26th of January. And it's been used as this big psyop to terrify the population in Australia as a whole and across the world. People in Adelaide were, before that, children could just roam freely. After that, everybody sort of was very, very paranoid about their children going missing. And there were worse, more graphic murders that, the details of which were known about because my father was involved with the family murders also, which happened in the 70s and 80s. So, and I witnessed, some of the, I don't want to use too much language, but yeah, some of that was presented to me. For some strange reason, and I can only put it down to corruption and cover up. The Mulligan inquiry is a suppression cover up. It just has not been investigated properly. I'm still hopeful that it will be. This is why I keep doing these interviews and talking about it. the more light gets shone on it, the more impossible it is for them to keep it quiet. I did say in a post that I shared on all my socials yesterday that, there's only so many unalivings that are supposedly by one's own hand that the South Australian police can cover up, because that just keeps happening in my family as well. So, and I don't want to go into detail there, but you know, they can't cover it up forever. And it's already out there. Myself, my two siblings, we've been talking about this for 18 years, and we're getting louder and louder and louder. So they're just going to have to do something about it eventually. But yeah, my abuses were satanic ritual abuse. There was medical abuse, as well as the trafficking and the sexual abuse. And I was used in a lot of child rape material, which probably still exists somewhere. And I'm sure, that will surface at some point as well.
Bless your heart. I mean, it's like Kathy O'Brien, Max, who we're coming to in a moment, Gloria Masters, all incredible women that have been on this channel, all with a very, very similar background at the hands of pretty much everyone's father and Masonic friends, satanic friends, or peers, whatever you want to call them, hideous monsters. And I so admire your bravery for continually trying to say the three children that were unalived, the Beaumont children that went missing, are in your father's back garden. Now he's dead, and you present that information where they're buried for, like you say, for 18 years, and the Australian government and the Australian police force ignore. And again, as you've said and shared, many of those potential supposed apparent authoritarians are also involved. And that's been the biggest shame on our planet, is the different levels where these corruptions are. So thank you so much, Rachel. So now we're going to move across to Max Lowe, and Max is going to give us in a synopsis is the wrong word, but really an overview of what this little girl has also endured in the American authoritarians and European. Hi, Max.
Hi. Yeah, mainly my abuse happened in Italy, although it also happened in America a little bit and in some other countries. Uh, I was taken underground into a facility, which these exist underground all over the world, and put through all kinds of torture. Things like being put in a freezer, being buried alive, being electrocuted, having to watch animals be tortured and dismembered and killed, and the same with people. Um, being put in cages with no food and no water for days at a time, sometimes alone, sometimes other children would be there, and then being put through all of these psychological kinds of experiments, like having to being put in front of a panel with two people, my younger sister and a stranger, a woman, both with bombs tied in their mouth, and being told that I had to choose which one would blow up and die. And, when I would say I'm not going to choose either, then they would say, well, then we'll kill them both. So this sort of training to make me believe that I'm a killer. I did press the button to kill the strange woman because I couldn't do it with my younger sibling. So I had to watch her head blow up, and I was then taken into the room and made to put my arm around her torso without a head at that point, and take photographs. They mocked me, laughed at me. I weaponized my empathy. They found out that I was very, very sensitive and could feel everyone. So then the torture sort of escalated to situations like I would be, and this would all be in the facility, by the way, and they would watch through these glass. The rooms would have three walls of glass, so they would watch. So there's so many to tell, but I'll tell one more where I was tied to a cross. They made a cross, and I was tied. And when you're on a cross, you lose your airway. If you sink down and you can't breathe. So they did it in such a way that to breathe, I would have to stand on my tippy toes. So I had to be there all night. And then they brought in, there was a semicircle of crosses, and they nailed a live animal to each cross so that it would torment me watching them die and bleed slowly. Um, and every time I would fall asleep or pass out, I would couldn't breathe, so it would jolt me back awake. Things of this nature were done to me constantly. I was also taken to parties. Sometimes there would be these beautiful apartments or mansions, so it would be indoors, and I would be dressed up. It would be black tie. So if you ever watched Eyes Wide Shut, something like that, except in that movie they didn't show the children. And so myself and others would be brought, and so the pedophiles could, choose the gender, the race, the age. And so, passed around at those parties. Sometimes they were outdoor parties that were hunting parties, and we were supposed to run and hide in the woods and then be hunted. I've witnessed children be sacrificed at these parties at the end on a big table. I've witnessed platters with cooked babies being brought out for these people to feast on. They would be enjoying this, they would be laughing and, drinking and taking drugs. And the torment of innocent children was something that fed them. They really did seem to enjoy that. And then so I can validate that there's tunnels in Rome as well, like there are everywhere, like Rachel says. And so I was taken to the subterranean levels of the Vatican. This would not be a place you can access from the cathedral or the top. It's way, way under the ground. And they had a big marble altar where I witnessed babies and children be brought in alive, brutalized, and then cut open while they were alive with a ceremonial knife. And the blood that came out then collected in these chalices in the four corners. And there would be VIPs in attendance, and it was a ritual to Lucifer. And so then they would drink the blood and sort of summon in Lucifer or other demonic entities. There's also a throne to Lucifer down there. So the Vatican is actually Luciferian, pretending to be Catholic. I was also experimented on in the facility medically with also, MK Ultra. I had that helmet on my head with the wires and, virtual reality things and all kinds of things like that. And then also in the Vatican, on not underneath, but inside some of the buildings that if you're facing the cathedral are on the right, and they would do rituals there. Sometimes there were other girls, and so that's kind of a brief synopsis. These horrific rituals that always involved rape and dismemberment and eating flesh and drinking blood and summoning Lucifer and just really a hell, kind of living hell, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
It's so hard to listen to, obviously, and I'm so fond of both of you, and it's just unbearable to imagine that as little baby girls that you've gone through this, or that you've seen the unaliving of so many children, and we're talking decades ago. And we know that it still happens, and there are so many people who are in just the darkest of denials, because who would even want to imagine that this is actually true? It actually happens. It's happening. And the light is getting brighter and brighter that's shining on it, but it's definitely part of, has been part of your existence. Max, one of the points I want to make to anybody watching is that both you and Rachel came from fairly affluent families. It's never just about the poor children in the trailer parks being passed around or sold to feed their families. It's the higher end of the Luciferian societies and the children that are born into that too. Um, when you were being trafficked through the Vatican and you said there was a throne there to Lucifer, what room is the throne in? What color is it? And who takes care of that?
It's down in those subterranean levels. And it's kind of, it's hard to remember, but it looks like gold or, very ornate with,
Mm.
you know, with gems and that kind of thing. And I also want to say to what you just said. I think that's a really important point that you made because the Hollywood version of pedophiles and of child trafficking is the is gang related or in seedy, poor neighborhoods. And while that does exist, um, child trafficking and child sacrifice is actually from the top down. So the people at the highest levels of power and influence and wealth, these elites, as they call themselves, are in fact the ones who traffic and sacrifice children. It's they're basically a global satanic cult. I mean, they have different factions. There's the Jesuits and the Freemasons, and they're all kind of from the top down. And so they just do it in a hidden manner, but they are indeed the ones who set the stage for this. And so children are trafficked secretly. They are tortured in military bases underground, like the one I was, underground under churches, through the way Rachel describes it. There's just many forms of that, but it is done by these very people, okay? And then they have set up all their organizations. So Child Protective Services traffics children, okay? They control at the top levels the education system, the medical, the pharmaceutical, the media, the judiciary. That's why people won't, that you can bring evidence and they won't do anything. So at the higher levels, they control all of the elements of society, and they're very wealthy and they have tunnels all over the world. And they are the main ones who traffic children. So that's actually the reality of it. I just kind of want to say that. And you see the statistic that 8 million children go missing a year globally. Go missing. That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah. Rachel, you have also brought to the public and globally, we brought to attention the fact that a lot of the senior police officers, etc., in your town were there was a fair amount that were also corrupt. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how that system works there in South Adelaide?
So for me, there was a missing child called Louise Bell. Her first real name was Tracy, and there was a missing child called Richard Kelvin. Now, Richard Kelvin was a family friend. So we had barbecues with the Kelvins, and there was all these interrelations. Both of those children were filmed with involved with a chief inspector of police. So I saw this guy, he abused me as well, involved with these two missing children. They're not really missing. He knew where they were. He helped to bring Richard into the underneath hidden cellar of my childhood home. So this guy's called Graham Bennett Fraser. Now, he was so well protected. He was a chief inspector of police. He was so incredibly well protected. He's now a convicted pedophile. He went into jail in 2009 for abusing two girls that were one of them, which was the same age as when he was abusing me, and same age as Louise, Tracy Louise, when he was abusing her. The other girl was 14, same age as Richard, when he was involved with bringing Richard in. So this guy, when it was found out that he had, in 86, it was found out that he'd been abusing, as a chief inspector of police, all he got was demotion. Until the 90s, when these two women girls, when he was abusing them, said, no, that's not okay. And so he got convicted. Now, I have made it very, very clear. I've spoken to special crimes investigation detectives in an interview about this guy, but they won't go after him for what I've brought up because of these two missing children that he was involved with and the other people that were involved with that, because they're being protected. So there is this long history of, if you get to a high ranking in the South Australian Police, you've got to be a Mason. So they all protect each other. Their oath is to one another. And, there's all these horrible things that will happen if they break that oath. They'll lose a leg. I mean, we've had television celebrities here who spoke at awards talking about, a Kennedy who liked to take little boys off into the casting couch. And shortly after that, he was having his leg removed. So he's dead now. So, and this is the thing, the small town Adelaide celebrities, a lot of them are part of this. So it's incredible, really. But yeah, the police, they've got it all covered up. There, at one point, there was a married couple. One was the police minister and one was the attorney general. How is that okay? How stitched up have you got that in my state where you can have those two people that are married having that much power? And of course, they didn't have the same surname because people didn't pay any attention. They didn't notice. It's so bad here.
Yeah, it's really Australia has taken such a, or become a focal point of the real utter degradation, of humanity on the lowest levels. And yet these people that do these crimes against humanity consider themselves special in some way. I can't imagine being so deluded and so evil and dark and soulless that you would actually think that you have any value on the planet. So we're hoping now, indeed, myself in particular, that everyone is named, everybody is called out. And of course, there has to be proof. And of course, there's footage of these beasts doing terrible things to you two when you were little girls and other friends of ours, Kathy O'Brien, Gloria Masters, for example. And I feel there is a reckoning now on the planet where we talk more and more and more happens. And I can't imagine how it must be for you two in particular to even trust, like, let's say, the political environment now that it's changing and shifting and the systems are coming down and those things are happening. I do see signs. I know you do too and have done it, but it must be so still difficult to go, oh, well, so and so's in now, still don't trust him, still don't trust her. It's really difficult from what you two have been through with humans who promised or pretended to be good and then just haven't and have let you down in the worst ways. I'd like us to share a little bit about MK Ultra. And for people that you girls have been programmed with it in different ways, try and help people understand what that is and what some of the behaviors are from that as we were talking off camera. Max, would you be happy to lead on this, please?
Sure, sure. So the MK, it's the K is German for control, so it stands for mind control ultra. And that's what it is. And satanic ritual abuse was the first kind of form of mind control. And later they brought in sort of a marriage with psychiatry, military, and now technology. So it's really been quite perfected. And what they did on us individually, they were also studying to implement on the global population as a whole. So, again, the Hollywood version is some creepy man in a lab, like hocus pocus. Well, that's mind control can be as simple as the repetition of a lie. Okay, so there was a pandemic, there's a pandemic, there's a pandemic. That lie was repeated so much. They know the brain and the nervous system. So with repetition, there's many studies that say if eight different authority figures repeat the same lie, it's taken as truth. Then it's you blend in fear. Fear causes the prefrontal cortex and the thinking, rational, critical decision-making part of the brain to shut down. And the brainstem and the limbic system is the only brain available because in a real danger situation, thinking is too costly. It takes too long, so you just react. So they know this. But when they pump fear, 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 fear at you all the time, you're essentially now causing the population to live in their brainstem and limbic brain and just react and react and react. So no one can think anymore or make actual decisions. And then they present the savior, whether it's an injection or it's whatever it is. So people are so under duress and trauma from the repeated fear that they just accept the solution, which is what the global cult intended in the first place. So that is one simple version of mind control. Also, there's things that we're just born into this culture. And so everything is a certain way, and we internalize it as the way that things are. So, for example, the fact that there are authority figures that get to tell us what to do, take portion of our income, force us to get experimental treatments, and et cetera. That's another form of mind control, that we're born into a reality that says that there's certain people who can tell us what to do, which is, insane. Part of mind control is weakening the human being. So we all are aware now that they're poisoning our food, they're poisoning our water, they're spraying things on us. There was here in the US, there were several places that had this mysterious fog. There's always something. So, and they've been doing this throughout time. It's just more awareness is happening now. So that's another way to mind control. Weaken the body, which is the vessel, the God-given vessel that our consciousness inhabits and we have a relationship with. Weaken that, weaken the mind. Stress people out. People work 10, 12, 20 hours a day. They're running on the hamster wheel just to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. And that is a form of repetitive stress that the mind kind of goes into a vegetative state. And then these people program you through the television, through the lyrics of music, through frequencies, right? So there's all these ways that the human collective is mind controlled, and that you wouldn't think of that as mind control, but when you start to look at it, and then throw in the educational system. So children are raised to believe whatever they're told, and children believe what they're told, right? So it's very ingenious. They have control of all of these societal things, and everything is geared towards reducing our consciousness. And then they have like the Tavistock Institute over in the UK, where you are. They actually, their mission statement, I went and looked at it. It said that they were going to use future shock and then gain control of the population, and that their agenda was the New World Order. So what does future shock means? It means wars. It means, something like 9/11, something like COVID. I hope I can say that on air. It means all these constant throwing out trauma and trauma and trauma. So trauma-based mind control. So the more you traumatize an individual, they go into shock, they go into a vegetative sort of, they can't take it anymore, and then slide the programming in. So that's what they did to me individually. So all these different things, and some of the things I already described, were an effort to mind control me. And so they use trauma. That's the most important thing. And so they will take a child and they will tell you something and then torture, 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 torture. So you begin to kind of behave in the way that they want you to escape more punishment. And then they'll rape you, but then they'll hug you, so then you bond to your abusers, also known as Stockholm syndrome. This is something that happened, when these bank robbers took hostages, and when the people finally, when they got rescued, they wouldn't testify against these people that took them hostage. There's something that happens in the mind because we all need to attach. It's the most basic survival is attachment when you're born. And so these creatures, as Rachel calls them, which I love that word, they know this. So they have used our psychology against us, our brain and nervous system against us, all of this effort, and then you add in technology. The DARPA had developed this FunVax years ago. It stood for fundamentalism, and they sprayed it. And the idea was supposedly that it would affect a part of the brain, because as above, so below. So in our biology, we have this, there's a part of the brain where you connect to the divine, right? So they would neutralize that part of the brain under the supposed idea that, well, these are suicide bombers and they're fanatical fundamentalists, so we'll FunVax them and then they won't be a threat. But imagine what they have been spraying on us, what they can do, and then the frequencies can put literally thoughts in your head that are not your own. So back in the pandemic days, there was a mad rush, at least in the United States. Everyone went and bought all the toilet paper off the shelves. Well, I found out from someone that was actually, they were testing it. So they pulled that thought form, and about 30% of the population complied. So it's very, very complicated and complex and deep, but we are born into a reality where we're mind controlled from birth, and our parents have been mind controlled. So they pass that on to us. So it's everywhere. It's the way that they hold control over us as a human race. And they have gone to an enormous amount of effort to do so precisely because we are divine beings in a human body. We are way more powerful than them. We are connected to the life force and to the light. And so they can't subjugate us and keep us as slaves if we realize our full potential and grow into who we're supposed to be. So everything is geared to prevent that and to make us indeed the vehicle through which they create the hell on earth reality, because they're parasites. They can't create. So they take our energy, and through us, they create this horrible reality that we see and live in now. But the good news is we created that under mind control. When we free ourselves, we can create a heaven on earth.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Rachel, what is your understanding and certain methods of MK Ultra that will also apply to you, please?
Yeah, so I'll use, because Max's overview is absolutely perfect, I'll just use some personal examples. So one of the greatest tools of mind control is hypnosis, and you can hear this in the television when you hear newscasters. They will use the same intonations and they will use a certain way of speaking because it's hypnotic. So my father would use those techniques with me, and one prime example was he would abuse me and then he would tell me to lock my mouth with a key and then swallow the key. And he would say that in a sing-song voice. He used to use a sing-song voice for a lot of the programming that he would do. And that also involved nursery rhymes, cones, he'd talk about the three-legged man, that sort of thing. So he had these very well organized techniques. But I remember one time I pointed out to him, how can I lock my mouth with the key and then swallow the key when my mouth is already locked? And the look on his face, it's priceless. I'll never forget it. He was standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And so then it was a big rush to, then you put it in the drawer and then you lock the drawer and then you swallow the key. But it was undone. It was already undone. But at 26, I got a lip ring. I had technically taken the mind control and physically represented it on my face. And when he first saw me with that, he laughed his head off in such a derisive way, which as an adult was not a very smart thing for him to do. So my brain was picking it apart. Eventually, I met a psychic who said, "Why have you got a lock on your lip?" Not knowing anything of what I've just told you. And that was another way that, that was around the time I started doing interviews. So, it's so powerful. We will take on the mind control information and we can actually represent it physically in the body. But hypnosis is something that people don't recognize. Hypnosis is so integrated with all of this. And, if you listen or watch the news, you are being hypnotized.
Yeah. Yeah, with the whole agenda of the monsters, with this, new world order, this one world order, they've been trying so hard in every way. They're still trying very hard, throwing things against the wall, hoping they're going to stick, marching forward with their agenda. And, part of that programming was to get us as a humanity to only focus on certain elements of authority. Anything to do with space whatsoever is NASA. Anything to do with hierarchical education and Catholicism is the Vatican. So we've all had that. So it's interesting, and I really wanted the audience that watch us today to recognize that they also are under the influence and always have been of MK Ultra too. And a lot of us are aware that the kind of rounded MK Ultra fully developed, psyop was really delivered and released, we believe, in World War II. And apparently Mengele was very part also of kind of bringing these experiments to the States. I'm sure there were many other people involved as well. But if people can look at people like you, look at what and listen to what you've been through, the worst horror film, there isn't a horror film worse enough than what you two have struggled through and amazingly survived physically, and that you're so rounded. And of course you have bad days, everyone does. Of course there's ups and downs that happen, but you've both learned so many tools to manage your lives. And now you both teach, and now you both heal. And there's nothing like someone who's actually been through something to the extreme that you have found the coping skills and mechanisms and now share them, as opposed to somebody going to a theology, studying to be a therapist with no life experience, not mocking them, but something as serious as what you've gone through. People need to know that there are women like you that can help others who've gone through similar. Now, Rachel, a few weeks ago, I was so excited for you, and you look forward to this particular conference that you were asked to speak at. And this is part of the work that you're doing on healing the planet and bringing ley lines and healing the ley lines and the cross points where the monsters have done all kinds of horrendous deeds and rituals over. Let's come over to you while you share with us some of your images, some of what happened at this amazing conference. Thank you so much, Rachel. Take it away.
So for those who don't know, and I'll share its screen in a moment, part of my childhood involved MK Ultra programming for psychic work, and I was used in rituals as a small child to commune with these entities that these idiots would conjure up, extremely dangerous entities because they were too inept to communicate with them themselves or too frightened, and I was just disposable. Through that process, of course, I have this innate belief in the spirit world, that we live in a multidimensional existence. So when you have that kind of foundational belief system, also, because I had so many near-death experiences but kept coming back because I knew there was work that I needed to do here, you have a profound belief system. And I now teach people how to open up their psychic abilities in a safe way, using protection, so that they can become, powerful, in a positive and altruistic way for humanity and for the earth. And one of my absolute fascinations, and the reason why I have a plant next to me today, plants are sentient. The earth is sentient. Elements are sentient. The water has memory. So, the world that we live in is so special and beautiful and amazing. And that's what I like to teach as well. So I teach a course on how to see auras. Max has done my course, ley lines, how to see them, how to find them, what the signs are, these elementals that we connect with. So I'll just share some stuff. So I was invited up to do this beautiful beautiful conference. So this was the lineup. I think the lineup changed slightly because some of these people don't look familiar to me. So this was just sort of about halfway through getting towards the conference, but just an amazing lineup of people. There's Brian Artis in there. These people are incredible. I was just so honored to be involved with it. There's me. So basically, the reason it's in the conferences takes place in Uluru in Australia, where there's this beautiful big rock. It's a sacred rock to the original people, and there's actually a crossing of two of the most powerful of the ley lines called dragon lines. There's only a very small number of dragon lines on the planet. Many, many, many ley lines. Like every square kilometre has at least one ley line in it, according to geobiologist Rory Duff. But where Uluru is, there's actually a crossing point of two dragon lines. Now, unfortunately, the second dragon line's not in this picture, but it goes across in this direction. Uluru is here. I do have an image of the two dragon lines that cross in this guidebook, but I can't show it because of copyright reasons. But you can see where the dragon lines are crossing over other continents here. Where the dragon lines cross over the continents, they cross over water as well, but where they cross over on the continents, you get chakra points. So the Uluru is actually considered a chakra point of the earth. So just like we have chakras, she has chakras. And in my opinion, the ley lines are part of her soul system. I also call them fifth dimensional. Where you get ley lines crossing, particularly, really large ley lines crossing, you get what's considered a portal space. A lot of ley line hunters call them vortexes. So ley lines can be found through dowsing, but we can also see them. We have cryptochromes, which are magnetosensors, a type of light sensor. The same CRY2 cryptochrome that we have in our retina, this is a scientific fact, is in fruit flies, it's in monarch butterflies, which is interesting because we have monarch programming with MK Ultra, and birds. So birds and insects use the ley lines to navigate through their cryptochromes. We can also see them, and that's what I teach in the course. along with so many other things. But I love this image from the conference because it shows the portal space above Uluru. So again, where you get multiple ley lines crossing, you get a sphere of energy that all the other dimensions are accessible from. And these open air rituals that these creatures perform, they do these things in these open air spaces, even though they could easily get caught. They have to keep everybody in the echelons around there stitched up, in case somebody makes allegations like myself. And they need to do it in these open air spaces because this is where these entities can be most easily pulled in or called in, conjured up, whatever you want to describe it as. Again, it's these portal spaces are fifth dimensional, and every other doorway comes off. And I just thought this is a really good image, to sort of as an explanation. It's like a train station. So if you pass, you go to a fifth dimensional space through a ley line. So you get to a portal through a ley line, and then you go to whatever dimension your requisite frequency as a soul will allow you to enter. If you are a really dark soul, you can't get into heaven because your frequency doesn't match. So people can, in the soul world, you can do work to heal if you're really dark, but there are entities that try and drag you into those dark spaces. So, the best idea is to always be good. Don't do nasty things. A lot of these idiots just don't seem to have that, don't seem to understand that. That's why I think they're just not very bright, a lot of them. So again, the Akashic is a repository for all knowledge, all action, all events on Earth, past, present, and future. So in those portal spaces, you can get access to all the knowledge that's ever existed and will exist. We have an ability to pick up on that through the pineal gland. So we have a gland in the middle of the brain that has little calcite crystals, which, like Wi-Fi, picks up on the Akashic. So when you're in a portal space or you're in a ley line, you can pick up more easily these frequencies and this information. This is Uluru. It's just amazing. And there's actually, this is a photograph that I took in December, and the moon was up. This was very early morning, just absolutely beautiful. This is the watering hole in one spot. And while we were there, I took a tour very early in the morning, and there was a whole group of us. And while we were there, one of the presenters, Rufus Rogie, played his didgeridoo, and it was just so beautiful.
Wow.
And then one of my coworkers, Deb, started singing "Time to Rise," which is the Lay Love Down song. So we all sang that as well, which was just meant so much to me. So Lay Love Down is a movement that I'm a co-founder of with Ben Hawkes, and Ben wrote the song "Time to Rise." And it's basically a calling in of this change that we need to make. So we encourage people to get out into areas where there are ley lines and sing into those ley lines, whether you sing "Time to Rise," which is the Lay Love Down song, or any song that is uplifting. We try to encourage using 432 hertz music, ululation, sound, dance, anything that expresses joy in that space to counteract all of the horrific things that these creatures have been doing in these spaces that Max and I witnessed as children, and so many others, unfortunately. That's Rufus. That's the platform that we're standing on over the water, and he's playing the didge. This is one of the amazing it's like a cave that looks like a wave that's right next to where that beautiful little water hole is. And I just thought this is interesting because one of the things I teach in my course is how pareidolia, supposed nebulous stimulus, actually can be incredibly profoundly spiritual. The earth sends us messages. I also talk about the creation of crop circles, and how they are the blueprint for all of these monolithic sites like Stonehenge. I believe the crop circles came first. They use that as the template. And I talk about, how the Akashic is actually released through ball lightning and microwave energy, as a way of the earth saying, hey, significant spot, pay attention. You need to come here and do positive, loving rituals. So she's communicating to us all the time. What's fascinating about this is the story of Lankala. You can see what I can see, like a dingo face there, eye, ear, face, maybe an emu, maybe it's chasing an emu. It's a really amazing story that comes with this cave about Lankara, who was an Aboriginal man who was greedy, and he took an emu from hunters that he shouldn't have taken, so we heard this amazing story about, don't be greedy. And then one of the people who was on the tour with us pointed out to me, because she knew about my fascination with pareidolia, and she said, there's actually an apparition of a fat man over at a distance. So nose, you've got your lip, your chin,
Oh my God.
boobs, big tummy. It was just amazing. So again, original peoples, whether or not they could see this apparition or not, when they were talking about this story, they take pieces of information that the earth gives them and they get a story from it. I don't know if that's specifically why that was there, but the reason I wanted to bring this up was there was um, a western facing part of the rock that we weren't allowed to photograph. But as we were passing it, the tour operator, whether or not he realized this or not, there was a massive apparition on the rock of a dingo's face as he told us the story. And I don't remember the actual term he used, but another term the original people call this entity as a warrigal. So this is a massive dingo-like creature that's considered like a shapeshifter, a bit like a skinwalker or the American Indians have similar stories. It's a cryptid entity. So the warrigal is like this spirit dingo that goes around and terrorizes people at the rock. And what I found fascinating about that is we had Marina Abramovich there years ago when a little baby went missing, was supposedly taken by a dingo called Azaria Chamberlain. There was a big furor about there, another psyop to make people terrified of nature and going to this beautiful place. Where you get the crossing lines of really powerful ley lines and these portal spaces, you will see cryptids. And in my opinion, these cryptid entities are entities from other dimensions that can be seen because of this interdimensional nature of these portal spaces. But you also can see back in time. And there is actually a well-known dingo from past eras in Australia that was at least, I think it was 8 foot long. It was huge. So it could be that we are in those portal spaces, original people or people now can see these, it's like a memory it's like the time still exists within that portal of that entity that lived at that time, that creature that lived at that time. So, I mean, these crossing spaces are so significant. This is again why, I'm fascinated with this sort of thing. This is actually, I believe, on the rock. I just got this off the internet of 3 circles. They're pretty perfect circles, pretty amazing. What are they doing there? So the reason I wanted to show the circles is because when you get out in nature, you can see ley lines. And I've just got a couple of examples. There's not much further that I've got to share here. There are 2 ley lines in this photograph, so I've marked them. Now, when you see ley lines in nature, you see these, it's like hazy, perfect circles, and you think, what's a perfect circle doing there? And this is how I found this. This is how I discovered that you can actually see them. And then I found that the scientific backing later. So there are 2 perfect circles there. So there's 2 ley lines. I've got a comparison there. You might be able to see where they are in each picture where I've circled them. This is the rocks just to the right of this. So this was my experiment because I wasn't sure whether or not you'd be able to see the smaller ley lines inside of these huge dragon lines, but you can, they're still visible. This is actually a portrait photo. You can see there's actually a further one, a third one. And then I've marked where they travel through. So the ones at the back are more obvious than the ones in the foreground. But I teach in the course how to see the ones in the foreground as well through a technique called relaxed vision, which Walter Kilner, the father of Kirlian photography, taught. When you look at things through relaxed vision, which you also need to read auras, that's how you read an aura, you can see a different aspect of the electromagnetic spectrum than you can see with clear and focused vision.
Brilliant.
And so that's just a comparison. That's me presenting with beautiful Doug McIntyre. Max is very familiar with Doug and Charlotte Belcom. We presented on SRA and MK Ultra, and Doug's just up there explaining about hypnosis in that particular at that particular point. That's me presenting on ley lines. This was the ceremony that occurred on the 21st, and this was one of the most profound moments of my entire life. This was the absolute antithesis of all of the rituals I was ever in as a child. this was a whole bunch of beautiful, like-minded people from the conference joining together. We were overlooking Uluru on a sand hill just outside the conference space. Rufus played his beautiful didge. The sound healers made their sounds, Tim and Elise. And then 5 of us women who were presenters there all came to the centre, and we brought in the 5th dimension, which is Rory Duff, the geobiologist I mentioned before, kept pointing out that at December of last year, the ley lines that normally would only harmonise at the equinoxes and solstices were going to come into permanent harmony time. So part of the reason I really wanted to go up for this conference was so that I could be in the crossing of dragon lines at that permanent harmony time. And so we ushered in the permanent harmony time. We sang the Time to Rise song together, which was amazing for me.
Ooh.
And then we danced and we moved. This is a beautiful congregation who were there. You can't see, but that's me in the background. And we just basically let our bodies move, and we just felt the movement, and we just brought in the 5th dimension. It was incredible. I got back fragments of my soul that had been taken in rituals in that moment. I cannot describe how profound it was for me. It was absolutely mind-blowing.
Wow.
So, and I'm going back again in 2025. So yeah, so thanks for letting me share those. It was one of the best things I've ever done. I've got the travel bug now in a bad way. I'm just traveling everywhere.
I'm so happy for you, Rachel. I'm so happy. I'm so thrilled for you. That was such a big event. You knew it was going to be magnificent, but I bet you didn't realize how healing that was going to be, and for you to receive back those fractals of your soul that were shattered and obliterated as a child. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Wow. Max, you are also doing incredibly profound work at the moment. In fact, you came straight from one of your courses here to join us on this broadcast. Just before we take some time to look at what you're doing and hear you explain, I wanted to again make the point, like I did with Rachel, that when you were being transported through the tunnels underneath the Vatican that exist, and while you're seeing European aristocracy, cardinals, bishops from around the world, every imaginable hierarchical authoritarian that could have anything whatsoever to do with the Vatican. And of course, there are 3 popes: the Black Pope, the Grey Pope, the White Pope. The White Pope is the public pope. People may or may not know that. I don't know whether you just saw something fly across the room there. But anyway, I'm not in my home. I'm in a mansion in the country for a night. And this is not my regular bedroom, people. I would never share my bedroom on the internet, but this is the only place I could get the internet to work. But moving aside, I wanted to, so we don't ever let anyone escape the light that must be forcibly shone on them, all the bad monsters on the planet that have got away of decades and decades that you've both witnessed. And so, Max, yes, I wanted to make the point about the types of people that you've seen in the Vatican. So feel free to speak on that, but also please share with us what your healing work is, and that people can come to you for your services.
Sure. I want to say we can take this experience, this dance with the dark for the thousands of years that it's been going on, and use it to grow up, because humanity's been a bit in childhood, and use it to transform ourselves, to rise into a higher level where we are the creative, beautiful selves that we are, but we've had this experience and now we also have wisdom and discernment, right? So I think everything can be transformed. And so, yes, I'm doing a 5-week course. There'll be a new one starting March 1st. And it's called Trauma and Recovery, because I think it's important to understand ourselves and how they've put this mental prison around us, because there's no need. That's what keeps us small, because we're actually so much more powerful than we know. So I want people to understand what is trauma, how they use it, the brain, the nervous system, attachment. I'm going to talk in the next class about how we get fragmented into parts, and those parts hold the trauma, and how we can use being triggered to open that up. It's literally a time travel to the past, opening up the trauma, and how we can heal those parts and then sort of integrate ourselves. It's kind of like what Rachel said, where, I spent some time in the Amazon studying there with a tribe, and they talk about soul retrieval. So the terminology is different, but it's the same concept. We've been fragmented, and we take these pieces of ourselves and we bring them back together. And then I also I end talking about the fact that we are really energy and consciousness, and how we've been taught to live from the mind, but the heart should be the leader, and the mind should be in service to the heart. And, I talk about the quantum physics experiment that actually shows that reality, everything is potential. It's a wave form. It only collapses into a particle, i.e., when there's a consciousness interacting. So in other words, we're creating the reality around us. So we have a responsibility to heal ourselves, to understand the trauma that they've thrown at us, to undo it, to restore ourselves to our true shape, so that collectively we can co-create a new earth, a new reality, a new world. And so it kind of goes with what Rachel teaches, where the earth is also a being, and we're living on this being. So we're not separate. We're all the energies of each of us, and the earth is impacting each other. So if we can understand how they're controlling us, and the wounding that we've endured because of that, and transform that, then we are going to, with the earth herself, transform this entire reality. And that's what rising in consciousness is, and what going to 5D is. It's not some fairy thing that, you travel on a spaceship to some other dimension. It's all inside us. So it's, how do we open this up and actually live on an earth that's in a higher dimension with us in this vessel, in this body, which is also needs healing. How do we live in that reality? And it's right here. I mean, it's this close. So we can do it. We've got this.
Yeah, I've got to
And
say,
Rachel is in my course right now,
I'm
by the
taking
way.
Max's course, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I just sit there and I just, oh, why didn't I know this before? And why didn't I know this before? So that is another part of piecing together the jigsaw puzzle that is your soul and your fragmented state when you've been through MK Ultra and SRA. Just incredible. It's been mind blowing. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rachel. I felt the same with your course. I didn't know that when I walked in the woods, I always everywhere would see faces. But I
Yeah.
thought, well, it's just, I'm crazy. It's my imagination. And then Rachel explained what it is. What's the word again? It starts with P.
It's pareidolia
Paraphilia?
according to
Pareidolia.
psychology, but it's actually the spirit of nature communicating with us. And everybody, every ancient culture knew this. Every ancient culture knew this, but we've had it taken away from us because, oh no, you can't commune with nature. The occultists do that. They want that for themselves. They don't want us to involve ourselves, which is why it's so important to go and do it.
Yeah.
Get out in
And
nature and
water.
enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and what you said about water too, I read a long time ago, I read Emoto's book. It's a beautiful book. It has all these images, and he took glasses of water and he taped words like "I hate you" or "I love you," or played classical music, or played acid rock to it, and then he froze that water and looked at the shape of the crystals under a microscope. There's imagery even on the internet if you Google it, and it's astonishing how harmonious and beautiful the love message water crystal is versus the hate. And water, I think water is the divine in 3D. That's just my opinion. It holds memory, but that's so powerful because we're made mostly of water. So it's so important. This is what I'm going to talk about too next week, is like how what we say to ourselves, besides the fact that our words are frequency, it's changing our bodies. So it's so important. I still, catch myself like, oh God, I was so stupid. Then I'm like, nope, rip that program out of my mind, replace it with something positive, because that alone can change a lot of things. So yeah, so thank you. And if people want to sign up for the course, it's on my website, Unbroken.Global, under classes.
Yeah, fantastic. Of course, we'll make sure that both of your websites are underneath this broadcast here. And again, bringing the MK Ultra awareness much more into into the forefront of people's knowing. I really do feel, as I know you two do, because we discussed it before we recorded, that it's a duty to let them know that it's happened to them too on a certain level. But when you say these things sometimes there are certain elements of people with personalities at different levels of growth who will then choose to hang on to that and then go into a victim dance or a martyr dance and then use whatever is unhealed in them to wrap that into something that becomes a drama and an anxiety that doesn't need to exist in the first place. And so I think if we just pull them back down to the beginning of this broadcast where you two are sharing some of the absolute horrors, and that we look at the end result of a healed, mature being that has managed to find its way, their way, your way, to a healing gateway, and yet still have the strength and ability and compassion and love for fellow humans. Because you could consider that what you two have recovered from, survived from, endured, and lived through would break most people. Of course, it would, and it has done. It literally has done. And again, it's so important that we get the right healing. There are so many unqualified people out there, unqualified therapists, people doing more harm than good. And it just, I couldn't be prouder to bring you on my channel and share you, like share the wonder of you, number one, just share the beauty and the genius of the two of you. And I know you don't consider yourselves on that level, but I don't care because I do. So I can pick you up like that, but it's just so amazing to witness the strength of the human being, the soul, the spirit, the heart, the passion, and that the love, because that's what really emanates from the two of you is your love and your compassion for your fellow being and for animals. Let's not forget the animals too. So it's amazing. I just want to check my notes because we did want to be clear. Oh yeah, your March 1st, your course is starting, Max, again, and you're running one currently. I love that you've both been in each other's courses too, and you're good friends and you're a good, loving support for each other. But obviously it's different areas, right? Rachel, this is your barefoot in the ground, you're connecting to the ley lines, you're helping people connect themselves to their true natures and heal in that energy frequency as well. And then Max, with the work that you're doing too, and the recognition and the words that we tell each other, it's just they dovetail beautifully into each other, but they are all also can be considered so very, very separate. Yeah, the one thing that we did also discuss that we might want to just spend a couple of minutes before we come to a close is that I mentioned to you that I met someone a while ago who had recovered from just there's no comparison, but equally horrendous happenings to them growing up. And they had managed to recover to certain levels and were now very much on the extreme end of, let's say, Christianity, totally devoted, um, ministering, etc. And I've noticed quite a few people have done that. They've gone through something similar to you and they've become the complete extreme. Um, and I would just want people to be mindful of being such an extreme version of what was to now what is, because I think sometimes, as I've witnessed, there can still be very strong attachments from the childhood to the moment, and not everybody is all the way free. Um, and obviously, we're not going to name names. I don't want to do that. Everyone's on their healing journey. But would you like to spend a moment sharing your thoughts on that situation that does happen?
Sure.
Yeah, I find it quite frustrating because of the work that I do in the psychic arena. If for those that are really full on Christian, what I do is supposedly evil. I mean, one individual in particular was talking about how her pineal gland was evil. publicly. She's talking about this. This is a part of her body that God has given her, but she wants to consider that evil. So I think there's a real danger to it, because
God.
especially if you're someone who's gone through MK Ultra and SRA, to go from that, which is the the worst dark version, to go all the way to the other side and be full on fundamental Christian and deny a physical part of your body that God gave you, um, it's just from one extreme to the other. But unfortunately, it's kind of going back into the same camp. Religion, in my opinions, the major religions, not all of them, but some are very much based in control, mind control. Um, Ignore any of your own instincts and just go for what a priest tells you, or somebody who's your middleman between you and God, or between your spirit guides, or what it is that is. And it's just wrong. And I know, obviously, with Max having been abused in the Vatican, which is supposed to be the highest authority of Christianity, which is just, or Catholicism, which is just ridiculous. Um, there's a danger to it. You can be too extreme. And unfortunately, also, there is this one-upmanship, or this sense of being better than others because they've gone this far into this religion. And so they exclude others for that reason. So, I mean, I've come under fire from Christians before, and there's nothing evil about what I teach. It is just simply learning your own abilities, because they've been taken away, through psychology and all these mind control techniques. So I find it really sad. It's really sad.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and actually, it's a God-given ability. We're all psychic, intuitive, self-healing, telepathic. This has all been dumbed down, but this is who we are. We are of God. If God is an ocean, we're each a drop. So it is very disturbing to me too. And I'm just gonna, I speak several languages, so I like to look at words because words are spells, right? That's why they call it spelling. So the word religion has the component ligare, which means to bind. Okay. And then when I think of the sign of the cross, I think that they're touching the pineal, they're touching the heart, and then they're binding it. Right. So anything that is any institution, and we're talking about religion now, that tells you that your divinity is outside of yourself, that you have to go through the priest or the rabbi or the imam, or that there's this man on a throne that you have to ask things of, that's disempowering. Okay, the divine is within us, and I believe that Jesus was a real being who lived here in human form, and they found some of the lost gospels. The Bible was made in, under Emperor Constantine to consolidate the Roman Empire under a religion. It's political. Okay, a lot of what's in there is about the Satanists. Some of it's true. It's kind of a mixed bag, but people wrote that. Okay, so they found these gospels in the 40s that were lost gospels, and I read them, and the one that supposedly Jesus wrote, he said, God is within. He said, do not create a church. So this is a way to take that divine nature that we have and disempower us and make it, again, some kind of authority figure out here. Just like medicine, we can heal our bodies. In nature, animals don't go to the animal doctor. They get injured and their bodies heal themselves, right?
Yeah.
So this is very disempowering religion. Now, that's not taking away that there is what you can call it, God, whatever word you want to use. You can call it source, you can call it the oneness, whatever you want to call it. That is real, and that is the life force that is in us. Each of our souls comes from that oneness. So that is real. And if you really want to say that, I worship is not even a good thing. That reminds me of Satanism. But if you believe in your divine self and in God, then how can you be against someone that is of a different religion? That's not real. That shows you right there that there's a problem. And I interviewed someone once who was Christian and perfectly nice and everything. And then this person told me that they couldn't interview me because they also did podcasts because I was not Christian. So anytime you're excluding someone for whatever reason, that's a satanic ideology, divide and conquer. Okay. So that cannot be good, but I think it's just another program. And also it has the allure of the Savior. So somebody, Jesus is going to come down and save us all. No, the Christ, he said the Christ is returning. It's the Christ consciousness. It's within all of us. We can develop ourselves to reach that level. We are here to save ourselves. Would it serve humanity if Jesus or Pleiadians or whatever swooped down and saved us? No, we'd be stuck in the same place of development that we're stuck in now. It's actually an opportunity for us to like a blossom to flower into our fullest potential. So to me that Christ thing is an energy. So a lot of people on this planet have achieved that level and are here to help teach others and awaken them and guide them. But that the fact that anyone would really, the part I don't like is what Rachel said too, that oh, well, you're dismissed because you don't. It's cult-like, it's cult-like. So it's no better than the other cult. Um, and we just everything is love. And we all just need to recognize that I'm a soul, you're a soul, you're a soul. And on some level, we're all one. So there's no difference between we may be at different levels, like someone's 2 years old, someone's 12, someone's 25, but we're all one. And so anything that divides, I don't trust. But people want a savior, they want somewhere to kind of a group to belong to. It's unfortunate, but it's just a stage of development, and I think you can get to a higher stage. And I was saying this in my course for I don't remember why, but whenever you go somewhere, you have to fill out the form, and they always include now race to divide you that way. I always put in human, human. Okay, no, fuck that. That's not, that's mind control. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
religions have a facet of mind control. And I don't want to be, I know this will be unpopular to some people that I'm saying that, but knowledge is power, and that doesn't negate the love and the divinity. I think it actually enhances it and frees it.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. One of the most important things, anyone, whoever you are out there considering anything about God, is when you hear people saying God, you need to know which God are they referring to? Are they referring to Lucifer? Are they referring to the demonizing, the devil, the occult, the satanic? Because we've all watched things on television, watching these big sacred events taken care of, and they are praying to Satan. And just because you didn't
Yes.
realize or you haven't noticed, it's happened in your face 100 times and still does, unfortunately. And so it's important that people don't go into the ego of, oh my God, I didn't realize, or, how could I have been so fooled? We've all been fooled. Okay. We just need to keep moving forward now, and recognizing everything about us. I'm going to say something really controversial here about Jesus. And I never believed, and I really don't think that it's safe at all to give your heart to Jesus. Oh, that's my heart, thanks very much. And it inhabits my soul. So I'm not handing you my heart and my soul. No, mate. That's not going to happen. But can you imagine the outcry of people that have been programmed and trained and will die on the cross for Christ because they think that's the right way? Everybody must suffer. He says, I am the only way. You won't get to my Father's gates. Stuff your gates. I want to get through your bloody gates. That's not right. It's all control. But they've wrapped Jesus up and they've put him out there as a liar and a cheater and a condemner of humanity when he came as a fully realized human to say to us, you beautiful, beautiful beings, you are so magical, you are so powerful. And the pineal gland is the absolute seat of creation. We astrally travel there, we connect to the divine there. And so anyone that says that these things aren't good and anyone that says crystals aren't good, it's like, mate, the world runs on crystals. Sit down and be quiet, have a lollipop. It is just too much. But at this stage, we do have a duty now to speak out. And it's so wonderful because it's so empowering to sit with women like you who have just survived, in their lives, the things, the horrors that we expressed earlier. And you are the scariest women in the world in all the right ways, in all the good ways, because you've seen it. There's nothing you haven't seen. And you know that the greatest power is love. And there doesn't need to be a name attached to it to put you in a gang or a group or a religion. It's just who we are, isn't it, at our core, at our fundamental core. So beautiful. Now, I just want to come, and this is anything else that you guys want to share. I would love to come to you, Rachel, for your final words for our beloved audience.
Well, one of the reasons why I love doing these sorts of interviews with beautiful people like yourself, Danny, is a little bit of the rebel in me. I like to express the fact that I have healed, not only because it's annoying for those who've abused me and shows terrible mind control that their mind control doesn't work. But what it really shows is for other people that have gone through the same sort of experiences that you can heal, you can thrive, you can be successful despite everything that's happened to you. You do not have to constantly be a victim. It also shows to people that my mind control was military grade, Max's was Vatican grade. These are really high level mind control techniques, and they're shit. They don't work. we're perfect examples. So
Oh, I love
I
it.
love that, Rachel. That's what I always say. The best revenge against these creatures is to live well. Hell no, I'm not going to remain a victim. Why would anyone want to be a victim? No. We have it all within us to transform all that trauma and heal. And then what we get to keep is the strength and the resilience and the wisdom and so we are beyond any of their control. That's why did they put so much effort into it, poisoning us, the electromagnetic grid, the mind control in all the various forms. Why are they always throwing trauma at us constantly? Because it's actually quite difficult to keep us down. So I do see that we're going into a whole different age, a golden age, and Rachel says the same thing. And what the golden age is just us coming into our full selves, into our full consciousness. They are losing the plot everywhere. They're making mistakes. They're doing things too quickly. So everything they do wakes people up. They're decimating the food supply. People are growing their own food. They did the pandemic. People don't trust, modern medicine anymore. Everything is backfiring in a way that's actually healthy for us. So it's like, so you want to get these creatures back. You don't want to act like them, but the thing they hate the most is that you can unmind control yourself. You can put yourself back together. You can heal your traumas. And indeed, if you want to change the world, that's the first thing that you've got to start right here, you know? And so my message to them is, well, you failed, didn't you? And you're failing spectacularly right now. And I have to say, I'm enjoying the failure. I'm enjoying watching the theater production, the curtain fall down, the props, sort of haphazardly placed. It's kind of funny. So I suggest we laugh at them because they hate that. And, nice run, but we're done with you. And we're taking our planet back and taking humanity back. And bye bye, sayonara, baby. You're not wanted here anymore.
That's perfect. It's like, bye, bitch. See you never. Apart from when you're being tried in court, and that you're standing in lines, all of you, and you're all soiling your underwear because of what you
Yeah.
did, and now you're caught. You pathetic, pathetic, pathetic. There isn't a word low enough to describe the atrocities. And we'll all get to enjoy. One thing just very quickly that does annoy me, there's all this like Princess Diana is alive, JFK Jr. is alive, this Michael Jackson's alive, all these made up psyop stories to get us all distracted, and then certain things were going to happen at this time of year. But at the end of the day, the most important thing, as you both said, is the healing. The healing inside. That's where we're at. That's what's important. That's how we all become more empowered, you know. And then if we want the popcorn, to sit down and watch the popcorn as the display of, people that get lined up. I remember what I was just going to say. I was going to say that they're like, oh, they've been arrested in Gitmo. They've been hung in Gitmo. And I knew that wasn't true,
No,
right? You guys, you knew that too, right? It was a psyop,
no,
wasn't it? It
that's a
was
crock of shit.
good. Thank
Gitmo
you.
is not, that's not true at all, not in the least bit. But I've had this fantasy, revenge fantasy, but what I would do is I would take all these creatures and I would put them in kind of like a zoo in the middle of each city, but it would be all see-through and glass. And then there would be a placard like, George Bush Sr., psychopath, blew up the Twin Towers, raped this many children. You know how they have the little descriptor for each animal. And then there would be like a little bin with rotten fruit, and you can throw it at the creatures that are trapped within their little glass cells. And it would just be an education for people. And the thing they would hate the most is it would be karma if they were locked up and we could basically, but again, we don't want to act like they do, but I think a little rotten fruit would be acceptable.
That would be very, very acceptable and very hilarious. And yes, name them. Because that's going to be the biggest shock for people who are in complete denial and have believed everything they've been MK Ultra'd into believing. The shocks when the names come out, Reagan, Dick Cheney, the awful, terrible names, that people have looked up to people so greatly. And, it's coming. It's coming. Well, anyway, my darling friends, thank you again for letting me sit with you, letting me, share your insights and your experiences to your joy, to your healing, and that you can reach out to humanity and help them heal within themselves and inside. So, Rachel Vaughan, I love you. Max Lowen, I love you, and I thank you so much. And to the beautiful audience, thank you for being here. Hope you have kept your kids out the room. Hope that this has fed and nourished your soul. It's a very, very important broadcast. And these ladies are very, very important souls on this planet. And they are gigantic markers of what is possible. My name is Danny Henderson. I send you love from my heart to yours. And I'll see you soon. Thank you, ladies.
Love you, Jenny.
Thank you.